Right. Groovy. Is there any way we can see how many people are in here?
Yeah, so there's a bar somewhere. So there's 7 people in at the moment. It will keep
7. Oh, wicked. Oh yeah, okay, I got you. 8. Hey, we're on the increase. 10. Wow, would you look at this? This is exciting, isn't it? I'm going to give it just like a handful of seconds to like let the numbers just build a little bit.
Yeah, it should be fine.
And then we can just go from there up to 20. Oh, this is quite cool.
I'm glad you're enjoying it, mate.
Yeah, man. I didn't think that we'd be able to see how many people were in it, so that's quite cool, actually. Oh, down to 19. I went to 20 and someone just saw me and just went, nah, not today. Not today. Right, okay. I'm gonna make a start.
No, Tom, sit tight for a bit, mate, because just give it 5 minutes. Just
give it 5. All right, yeah, okay.
Everyone needs to settle down and stuff.
Okay, fine.
And everyone can hear your lovely conversation right now. It's probably putting them off, to be fair.
Quietly sip my tea.
First of all, just while everyone's coming, I'm just going to give it 5 minutes just to make sure that everyone's settled. One thing to note, thanks for everyone who's coming back, who was on last time as well. I know last time was very much a broad view about what marketing's about, what I think, my opinions on the market. Obviously, this one here with Tom Jacobs, who's our head of advertising, and he's going to be discussing what actual strategies and techniques you can be implementing in your business and how to do it, more importantly.
Yeah, exactly. So the way that I've kind of angled this is I find that whenever people ask us to do talks and invite us to do talks, the questions that we always get asked is like, what's going on inside your agency at the moment? What's going on inside your ads team? What's current? What are you doing? What do you think's working? And what do you think's not working? So the way that I always try and put these talks together is to answer those questions, really, to kind of give an insight as to what we're doing as the advertising agency at the moment, and share some of the ideas about what we think is working at the moment. And then I've also included just some of my kind of marketing thoughts and the way which I think the industry is going, and some more sort of commentary bits like that. So yeah, that's how we'll do it. We'll take questions on the fly as well. Pete's our question master today. So
yeah, right. So just so everyone understands, on the bottom bar, I believe it might be a different view to everyone else. There's a Q&A button. If you have any question at all during any point of this webinar, just give it a nice little click on there, put your question in, and then when Tom's at an end of a sentence, I'll interrupt him, and ask him away. So yeah, literally any question, don't worry about if it's completely off topic, if it's digital marketing related, maybe something's happening in your business, maybe it's something you're kind of concerned about at the moment, then just let us know. Apparently there's some issue with people getting on, but well, we'll figure that out as we go. See, this is just over the way. This is Zoom webinar, so it's like you lot see the same angle, I believe, as Zoom, but we get a more fancy interface. Okay, Tom, let's crack on. So I'll pass it over to you now. And like I said, guys, any questions, just fill them in that Q&A and I'll jump in.
Well, thanks, Pete. Okay, guys, first of all, thanks for joining us and welcome to the webinar. What I want to talk about today is a little bit of innovation in B2B marketing. And I'm going to expand on that. So I think that given the chaos and the crisis that we're experiencing at the moment, it's brought about a need for us to be a bit cleverer and a bit smarter and a bit more selective with the advertising and with the marketing that we're doing. What I'm going to share with you today is a number of different things that we're using for our clients inside our agency at the moment. They're things which are working for our clients at the moment, and things that are generating a return for our clients despite the chaos of the situation in which we find ourselves in. So as Pete highlighted, if you've got any questions along as we go along that sort of apply to your business or an advertising problem that you're facing at the moment, please do feel free to submit them. Pete's going to read them out and we can just give you some on-the-spot advice based on what we would do to combat that challenge if we were experiencing it inside our agency. So first of all, a little bit about me. My name's Tom Jacobs. I head up our advertising department at Distract. I basically oversee all of the social ads and search ads activity. I've worked on multiple award-winning campaigns in a range of different industries. I'm going to start the talk today talking about marketing intuition. This talk has got a number of different sections, if you like, which cover key themes, key marketing themes within them. The first one is about marketing intuition. Marketing intuition is something that I think, unfortunately, has been lost in marketing broadly, in digital marketing broadly. And I think that it's been lost because we've seen a huge influx in access to things like data. So I believe that digital marketers broadly have become obsessed with data. I've seen that digital marketers are so obsessed with being able to put the buyer journey into small little step-by-step data boxes. The idea that you can put something that is so complicated, which is the human brain, into tiny little logical data steps, for me, just doesn't quite add up. The fact is that digital marketers have got so much access to so much data now, whether it be in Google Analytics, whether it be in Google Ads, Facebook Ads, whatever it is, we've got so much access to data, we've essentially paralyzed ourselves, and now we can't see anything else except this data. What I think digital marketers need to do, and what I'm encouraging our staff to do in the way that we operate, is to take a step back and inject some intuition into this, some understanding of how the human brain works, what makes people want to buy things, what makes people feel things. I think that what I'm trying to get at here is what we need to do is we need to re-inject some empathy into the way that we digitally market. We've seen so much obsession over data that it's paralyzed us, and we need to take a little bit of a step back. The fact is that data, whilst incredibly useful, will often tell you things that intuition won't. We're seeing more and more automation in marketing, where you can automate things based on data, based on machine learning, but there are certain attributes of marketing which I believe that you can't automate. And one of those is intuition. One of those is the idea of how a human being can make another human being feel. And I think that what we've done in digital marketing broadly is that we've forgotten that element. We've forgotten how to make human beings feel things, and we've become so obsessed with putting the right advert in the right place at the right time based on data. And my personal opinion is that just isn't as effective as making people feel something. So I think intuition allows us to make people feel something, and allows us to make our brands helpful. I'm going to give you a little bit of an example for this. Now, we work for a company called the National Education Union. They're the biggest education union in the UK. Now, if we were just following data all the time, without doing any intuition, any thinking about the way that the human brain works, the way that the buyer journey works, then what we would be bidding on all of the time is things like join the teaching union. We're contracted to get more members for their teaching union, right? So obviously the thing that we would be doing would be to bid on that. What intuition wouldn't tell you to bid on is things like teacher pay scales, right? Teachers looking for information on various pay scales. Now, intuition wouldn't say do that because those people right there and then aren't looking to sign up to a teaching union. That's quite literally not what they're going to do. So people are going to be clicking our ads, and then they're not going to be joining the teaching union. That's not what data is going to tell you to do. If you're running that campaign next to it, you're not going to get many conversions next to it, right? Obviously, data is going to tell you not to do that. But intuition says do that. Reason being is this. A, if we run an ad that says, here's all the teaching pay scales for you, no worries. When people are searching for that, A, they found us, and then they're going to get an affiliation with us because we answered the question. We gave them the information for free when they needed it. Second of all, what those people have done is they've effectively told us, hey, I'm a teacher, right? No one's looking at this stuff except teachers. Why would you, right? If you're not a teacher, why are you looking at teacher pay scales? What these people have done is they've essentially clicked on our ad and told us, yeah, hey, I'm a teacher. That's incredibly useful for us because we can build audiences of people that have been on those pages with the full knowledge that those people are teachers, right? And this is exactly what we did. We ran ads on teacher pay scales for the website. And then what happened is we saw an absolute influx of traffic coming in. Loads and loads of teachers, as it turns out, are searching about pay scales. They want to understand what the different pay scales are in their industry, right? Now, when people hit this site, what we've done is we've allocated them into a digital audience in Google Ads, which says to us, okay, we know that those people looked at pay scales. Chances are, if you're looking at pay scales, you're a teacher. Next time that they make a search around joining a union, let's make sure that we bid up on those people, because those people are definitely teachers. They already know us. They've probably got a bit of affiliation for us. We can definitely get an easy win here. And that's exactly what we did. When people begin to search something that isn't even necessarily branded, it's just around unions, straight at the top of their search results page, they're seeing a big fat ad from the National Education Union. Why? Because we've told Google, we really, really, really want to show ads to those people. So we'll use what we call a bid adjustment to increase our bid, inflate our bid, to make sure that we're at top of that search results page, to make sure that they click our ad and not our competitors. The reason that this worked so well has two strands to it. We're able to achieve a cheaper CPA because A, those teachers felt like they had an affiliation to us because they kind of already seen us about. They looked at us on pay scales, we provided that information for free, they already knew us, which meant that they were more likely to choose us. Second of all, what this allowed us to do was to cut out loads of the advertising wastage that we were using. So all of the people that, like competitors that were saying join a union, clicking on our ads, because we were able to cut those people out because they hadn't come through the pay scales campaign, we weren't advertising to them. So we were able to also reduce the CPA of a new member for that organization greatly by the fact that we were also not advertising to the wrong people. Cut out wastage, be more relevant, equals a cheaper CPA. Now, data would never have told us to do that. Data would have always said, bid on join a teaching union, bid on join the NEU, those type of safe terms. Intuition would never, would never tell us to do this, but intuition would. And if I can start this talk by giving you one takeaway tip, it would be less reliant on data and more reliant on intuition. Don't necessarily disregard data because it's incredibly useful and we use it every day, but learn to use it with a pinch of salt and also inject some intuition and find a balance between the two things. I'll have a sip of my tea. Second thing I want to talk about, which is super current in our agency, is the power of questions. I'm going to go into this in some decent detail.
Tom, just a quick one, just to jump in. David's just commented saying, what's the CPA? I think it's worth just mentioning to everyone. I've replied, but I don't know if it comes across to everyone. But I think it's worth mentioning what a CPA is and any other acronyms you're going to use in the future. Yeah,
that's absolutely fair enough. Sorry, guys. I get easily carried away because I'm used to talking to other people in my team about these acronyms. A CPA is a cost per acquisition. So this is basically the cost that we've had to pay in advertising to be able to acquire that user. Now, we have certain targets set by our clients as to where, based on their margins and things like that, as to what we can go up to. Often it's a percentage, often it's a number. Now, what was great about this is that we were able to reduce that cost per acquisition, i.e. reduce the amount that we're having to pay in advertising because A, we cut out wastage, but B, we improved our conversion rate from people that already knew us, essentially. I.e., because people already had seen us in the pay scales campaign, they were more inclined to buy from us later down the line. So rather than it being 10% of people, it was 20% of people. And because it was 20% of people, we were essentially able to double the amount of people that were doing it. That's the nature of it. So CPA, cost per acquisition, the amount that's having to be spent in advertising to be able to acquire a new customer. Any other questions just like that, then please do just submit them because we want this stuff to be understood and be able to be implemented. So that's a good question. Okay, so the power of questions then. So this is the idea that people will ask questions at the top of the funnel. So I'm going to talk about something called the top of funnel effect. Now, people will be familiar with marketing funnels. They come in a range of different forms. It's basically the idea that at the top, you have something kind of like awareness, where people at first become aware of your brand. In the middle of the funnel, you have something kind of like consideration, where they're looking at you, they're looking at different options, they're looking at your competitors, they're kind of considering whether this is something that they really need. And then the conversion, it's something where they actually decide that they want it, and it then becomes a choice whether they choose you or your competitors. That, in essence, is a marketing funnel. And there's lots of different variations of that in one form or another that swap out words, add in stages, but largely awareness, consideration, conversion is your standard marketing funnel. Now, what we see often in advertising is that people skip the top two funnels and they go straight for the bottom one. Advertisers disregard the idea that people have to be aware and that people have to consider, and just go straight for the fact that people are just going to buy there and then. And that's quite short-sighted, in my opinion, because it's very rare that people will buy things completely on spontaneity. People like to be considered with purchases. They often think a long while before doing things, and the chances are by the time that a prospect has made contact with you, they've probably looked at you between 8 and 10 times. That's just the nature of it. What this means is that we need to invest more into the top of the level funnel. What advertisers will often do is they'll just bid on what we call high intent keywords, which is people that are ready to buy now, people that are literally looking to buy something now. Now, unfortunately, those keywords are often very expensive. Why? Because all our competitors are doing it as well. Everyone's after those big fish, right? Everyone's looking after that low-hanging fruit. What the top of funnel effect does is it invests in advertising earlier in people's buyer journey. When people are just starting to research the topic, when people are just beginning to consider different options within the topic, if we can get those people earlier on, not only will they become cheaper to advertise to later on, but also we'll be able to build connections with those people, which means that they're more likely to buy from us. Again, we go back to what we said before. Data will tell us bid on those things at the bottom because they're the people that are most likely to buy. They're the people which are most likely to convert. Intuition says no. How about we look at the top of the funnel where that fruit is a little bit less low hanging, but is equally got massive potential. So let's explore this a little bit. The fact is that people are more likely to Google questions than they are to ask you, right? People sometimes feel embarrassed to ask questions, but they don't feel embarrassed to ask questions to Google because it gives you a sense of anonymity. No one knows that that's a question that you're asking, right? Now, we took this thinking by using platforms like Answer the Public, by using platforms like Google Trends to get an understanding of the different questions which our target market, people like marketing managers, marketing directors, people that work in marketing teams and organizations are asking Google, right? We're thinking like it would be really easy for us to bid on things like digital marketing agency when we're trying to get new clients, but the fact is that all the other digital marketing agencies are doing that as well, which makes it really expensive, and it basically just becomes a bit of a dogfight at the bottom of the funnel. Got us thinking, could we do something higher in the funnel when people are sort of searching around digital marketing things? Maybe people in internal marketing teams are having problems with Google ads and they're searching for information on that. Maybe people work in certain sectors and they're trying to get an understanding of how they can make digital marketing work for them. We took this thinking and created loads and loads of content which answers those questions in the form of podcasts, in the form of blogs. I'm going to just expand this. So what we did at the beginning of this is we created a podcast called Ask Distract. And what this did was it was designed around questions which people would ask Google, ask things that Answer the Public. And what we'd do is we'd put those questions to our expert team, and then they would answer those questions and they would talk around them and they would offer the advice on that. First and foremost, we've got some audio content of people answering those questions that those people in Google were asking. Step number one. What we also did is we dictated those podcasts into blogs. We also wrote other blogs that answered these questions that we were seeing people asking in things like Answer the Public, asking in Google Trends, etc. And also that were being asked on the back of the content that we were asking already. So when we would put a podcast, people would send in questions. Yeah, but how about this? I work in this industry. Can we do it like this? Okay, so then we ask those questions. What you see is this is multiplying like a tree all of this content is growing and growing and growing. Before you know it, you've got an absolute plethora of content on your site, which answers loads and loads of different questions, which your target market are asking, right? All the questions which in theory your service can solve, but they're asking those questions because they're at the top of the funnel. They don't know they're ready to buy yet. They're just in the awareness. They're just in the consideration. They're trying to find a fix themselves. But what they are doing is they're basically saying to you, hey, I'm your target market. That's what they're essentially doing by reading your content. What we then did is we filmed all of these podcasts as well. And just as a side note from this, if you guys don't sort of make podcasts at the moment, or you're thinking like, okay, I need to make content for my socials, but like it's incredibly time hungry, podcast is an absolutely great place for you to be. Why? Because not only can you record it, so you've got audio, not only can you dictate it, so you've got written content, but you can also video it, so you've got video content for your social feeds. This one conversation that you have between two marketers then becomes content for 3 different channels. It's incredibly good use of one event to spread across different channels. I would really, really recommend that if you guys are short on time to create content for your marketing. But anyway, so we were able to video these, and then we were able to actually use videos to answer these questions as well. So if you go to our website, there's a section which has got videos of people answering questions as well. So not only have we got written content, we've also got videos of these people. So let's say that someone's asking a question around Google ads or Facebook ads as to how to do something in their industry, how do I make Facebook works ads in X industry? We've then got a video for that. So when people search for that, our video will come up, they come to our site, they use the content, that's great. But then they've come into our remarketing audience, right? We can advertise to those people later on with messages that promote our services. But we know that we're speaking to the right people because they identified themselves to us early on. Now, using this remarketing, we can then drip feed further content to them over time. Things like additional podcasts. Maybe we can do things where we send them blog content via the form of an email if we've captured their details. The fact is that once these people have initially identified themselves to you, you can continue to advertise to them over time. Now, you might be thinking like, why is this important? Like, why is it important that I do that? I think what's important is who's asking. So to be honest, this stuff is only really important for us if it's marketing managers, marketing directors that are reading this stuff, because that's ultimately who it is that we want to read this stuff. So why this is important is who's asking. I've seen this type of thing transferred to so many different industries you would not even believe. The fact is that there's questions and answers in every single industry. Every single person watching this, your customers will have questions that they ask Google before they ask you. You can totally create content which answers those questions and creates a funnel effect whereby you're getting these people into the top of your funnel earlier before they even know that they want to buy from you or buy from your competitors. Most recently, we did this with a company who basically works with social workers. So they provide training to social workers who work with children who have had like trauma in their childhood, essentially. Very, very important work. And we spoke to those people and they said, okay, well, we get all of these kind of different questions from social workers when we're running these courses. Could we do something whereby we provide the answers to them digitally? And that's exactly what we did. So what we did is we created a series of ebooks, which basically answered these questions that social workers would typically ask these trainers. And then we gave it away for free. Now, this is really, really useful because what we were able to do is harness the data from over 500 different social workers. So these people which are looking for information on the type of things which these guys train, we were able to capture their information. And then what we're able to do is do things like email drip feeds. We were able to continue to remarket to them in things like LinkedIn and Facebook and Google Display. And then also what we were able to do is give their information to their sales team, who then gave them a call and said, what did you think to the ebook? You've got any feedback for us? Well, if you'd like an introduction to someone else in our team who can maybe offer some training, then and that worked really, really well. What we continue to see from that campaign is that these guys continue to get more and more course bookings from these social workers because they had that initial interaction with them while those guys were still researching this topic rather than when they were just looking to buy something. So it's totally adaptable and really effective to get people higher up in the funnel. How are we doing for questions, Pete? Have we got anything new in? I don't think you can hear me.
Mate, when I gave you the host, it stopped you from talking. But no other questions coming in. But on that, guys, if you do have any questions, like I said, just jump in that box. Even if it's one relevant to your business. And what I mean by that is, if it's something that Tom said that you think is right, or you need some further clarification of how it works for you, then just say, and then we can make it relevant to your business, make it nice and simple.
Yeah, exactly. Because some of this stuff, guys, is like, this is complex stuff. Like, this is like next level. Like, you know, this is advanced digital marketing stuff and advanced digital marketing theory here. So if you do want something kind of explaining a little bit further as to how it might apply to your business, or you've got like a marketing problem, like just send it in and we can just give some on the spot advice as to how we would tackle it, really. Totally up for that. But I'm also aware that I get quite excited about this stuff as well, and sometimes I end up rambling. So please do just say if you're not quite understanding what it is that I'm going on about.
We've got a question that's just come in from Helen and Frank, and they said, do you have any examples regarding distributors and end users? Helen, if you can just give us a bit more information on that, happy to even say the business name in general. But if you're talking about a distribution company, probably the best thing to do is LinkedIn right now. LinkedIn eBooks is working phenomenally. I don't know if are we touching on that at all, Tom?
No, but I'll just go into it a little bit now, if we can. So,
and Helen, another thing worth mentioning right now, we're seeing a real big shift towards distribution businesses moving towards end consumer. So where you've got someone who used to, let's say, for example, someone who used to supply motorcycle parts to motorcycle shops, they're now creating the consumer brand, because they're buying the product in a much cheaper rate than the other competitors, so they can undercut a large proportion of the market. But if you give us a bit more example regarding kind of what you mean by that, then I'm sure Tom or myself can advise. But yeah, we need a bit more information if possible.
Yeah, distribution going straight to market as well also opens up a whole load of margin, which means that you can be more aggressive with those cost per acquisition as well. A cost per acquisition which would result in a loss to another retailer would actually just result in maybe a smaller profit for you guys as a distributor. So it means that you can be more aggressive with that advertising as well, reach more people and not worry so much about that cost per acquisition. Just to go into a little bit more detail about the LinkedIn ads that we run at the moment. I'm a big fan of the LinkedIn advertising platform. And the reason is because it offers something which not a lot of other advertising platforms really does, which is the concept of being incredibly targeted with regards to the jobs that people do. So LinkedIn has something really good whereby it allows you to target people with A, specific job titles, and B, specific job functions, i.e. roles that they do within their job, regardless of their title. Now, this is great for a B2B organization like us, because let's say that your target market is hypothetically marketing managers, then I can literally run ads to marketing managers, people that match that job description on LinkedIn, and I know that I'm talking to exactly the right people. I can even narrow it by industry as well. So let's say that I only want to talk to marketing managers in, let's say, charities. I can narrow it so that I'm only talking to matches job title, marketing manager, matches industry, non-profit. We can do things which are incredibly targeted, really honing in on that individual. And I think that this is so important at the moment, because I highlighted at the start of the talk the fact that we're needing to be a little bit cleverer now. We need to stop doing this blanket advertising and expecting it to work. And we're having to be a little bit more selective with the advertising that we're doing. Reason being is that if we continue to advertise in the way that we do, that's not going to work anymore. The fact is that people are facing squeezed budgets, they're facing harder times. We need to be more selective, and we need to be clever with the advertising that we're doing, essentially, if that makes sense. Cool. Okay, let's roll on to becoming a brand then. So there's a couple of different strands to this. First of all, I want to talk about owning your data. And then I also want to talk about that. I think that there are essentially two different types of advertisers. So first of all, reliance on data. Data is getting increasingly expensive. What we essentially do is when we target people that are interested in X, that have an affinity with Y, we're essentially renting data from these marketing platforms, from things like Facebook, from things like Google. We're essentially renting that data. Now, the thing is that data is getting more and more expensive, which means that we as advertisers need to get cleverer with the way that we use it. How do we get clever? We use that word intuition. We use our brains. We use our brains to understand how humans think, how they feel, and also what emotions make them buy things. That's what we have to change. We have to fuse data with intuition rather than just relying on that data alone. Now, there is essentially two different ways which I think that people advertise, or you can kind of, broadly speaking, divide this up into two different things. Now, the first one is using these things which I highlighted just a second ago, renting targeting from people like Google, from LinkedIn, people that are interested in X, people that are interested in Y, people that have an affinity to this, people which are technically in market to that. Those type of things where we're using their information, their insights to target our adverts. The other way that you can do this is target people based on their previous interactions with your brand digitally. So this might be people that have viewed certain pages on your website, people that have viewed certain videos on your site, people that spent a certain amount of time on a certain page of your site. Now, this is really important, and this is where all of that top of funnel stuff comes in, because if you haven't done any of this top of funnel stuff, then you try to own your own data and you try to have ideas about which pages people are looking at on your site becomes very, very difficult because you haven't invested in trying to get people into the top of funnel at the start. So what we're trying to do in our agency is we're trying to move clients as much as possible to owning their own data. I want to have conversations with clients saying that we've had this many people on this particular page and therefore we're showing them an ad about this. We've had this many people that looked at this thing and therefore we're showing them an ad about this. What I want to have less conversations about is, well, Google says that they're interested in this. Oh, well, Facebook says that they're interested in this, because that data is becoming increasingly expensive and we don't want to rely on it, because sooner or later it will become too expensive, it will become impractical, and we'll have none of our own data, so we'll be forced down that route anyway. We don't want that. Now, once you take ownership over your data, once you take ownership over the fact that, okay, I'm running adverts because they viewed that page on my site, they read that blog on my site, they watched that video on my site. Once we start owning that data, it allows us to be a lot more relevant with the advertising that we do. Now, it's an age-old tradition that advertising is more effective when it's more relevant to the person that is viewing that advert. Therefore, as marketers and as an advertiser, it's our mission to be as relevant to those end users as possible. Now, there's a phrase which I use when I'm doing talks like this, when I'm talking to clients, and also when I'm talking to the people in my advertising team as well. And if you're going to take anything away from this talk, it would be these two words: hyper relevant. Can we make our advertising hyper relevant to the people that are viewing it at the other end? Can we take the relevancy of our advertising to a new level? A level beyond the blanket advertising that we're so used to seeing all the time? Is that something that we can do? Because that is how we innovate in B2B advertising. That's how we cut through the noise. That's how we still make a return in crazy times like the chaos that we're currently seeing. Hyper relevancy. Now, I believe that typically when we're talking about creating a brand, you have two things. You have advertisers and you have brands. Advertisers blanket advertise, they rely purely on data and they just show the same message to everyone. Brands make you feel something. They build a connection to you, and they do that because they're more relevant to you. They provide messages which make you tick, which might not make other people tick, but it's okay. They're showing different messages to those people. You build a brand by being relevant to those people. So take a step back and think, okay, what is my prospect actually feeling at the moment? What are their thoughts? What are their pain points? What are their concerns? What are they looking for? Can I provide a piece of marketing that actually addresses those things, that is actually hyper relevant to the things that they're feeling and they're thinking at the moment? If you can achieve that, then you're well on your way. Let me tell you guys, you really are well on your way. I guess what this is all in aid of was moving away from the idea that we're advertising machines and into something that is more relevant. I see so much marketing by so many marketing people that just doesn't cut through. The fact is that so many marketing people are marketing to their prospects in a way that they wouldn't want to be marketed to themselves. And yet they continue to expect good results from it. I just don't understand. The fact is that very few of us respond to sales messages, but yet I see a disproportionate amount of them everywhere. Why? Because advertisers are advertising in a way that they wouldn't want to be advertised to. So take a step back, look at the communications that you're doing and think to yourself, would this make me take action? What would this make me feel? And we go back to the first point that we were talking about today, guys, empathy. What does your advertising make those people feel? It's something that has largely been forgotten and is so important. Now, once you embrace this change, you'll see things happening alongside it. As soon as we become more relevant in the search advertising results page, i.e. our adverts are so relevant to what that person has searched or what they've looked at before, we're going to get a higher click-through rate. A click-through rate is the ratio to the amount of clicks that we get to the amount of times that our ads are shown and not clicked. So we'll get more people clicking those adverts if we can make them more relevant to what they're searching for. I've got a little bit more on that later, which I'll show you as well. If we can make our adverts more relevant, we're going to get cheaper acquisition costs. Reason being, we're cutting out all that wastage. If we're really, really hyper specific about what it is that we're offering, we're not going to get the people that want something slightly different. We're not going to be spending advertising on those people, which means that our cost of acquisition, the amount of advertising money that we have to spend, is going to come down because we're wasting less of it. What you'll also find in time is as you get more and more relevant content on your site, you know, this top of funnel stuff, which I was talking about before, all of this really rich content about answering questions that you have in your market, really key studies, those type of things on your site, which really genuinely offer value, which are really interesting and helpful to read. You're going to find more PR coverage and you're going to find more links to your coverage because, secret guys, journos love this rich content. They absolutely love it. And for your PR teams and your PR agencies that are going after all of these PR slots, well, you can say, well, I've got all of this content on my site that you guys can link back to. It's super helpful. That's only going to increase your conversions and increase your coverage, guys. It really, really is. So think about trying to build things out that way and provide more useful, relevant content to your audience. The fact is that as soon as we become more specific, we become more effective. I come back to say what I said before, advertising is most effective when it is hyper relevant to the person who it is being shown to. So if we can be more relevant, we'll be more effective. Let's take this example, for instance. Now, let's say that we have a customer or a prospect that's been on our website before. We are a women's clothing website, okay? I'm heading up the campaign for this. Let's say I've got a prospect which has been looking at pink women's tops, okay? They've been in our top section and they're looking at the pink ones. But they viewed them for quite a long time, viewed a few different ones, but then they left and they didn't buy anything. They got interrupted, they weren't ready to buy yet, whatever it might be. Now, let's say that we're advertising to those people. Now, those people, that person has just searched in Google women's clothing, something very, very broad. Now, what would data tell us to do? What would data tell us to do? Data would tell us to leave that alone. That's like pink women's tops, women's clothing. They're not the same thing, right? there is a big gap between those two things. Data would tell us to leave that alone. Intuition tells us that that person has been on our site before, looked at something that we sell, and is kind of looking for something similar now. Can we place an ad in front of them? I think it's worth a go. The next part of the question is, how can we make that advert hyper relevant? Well, what we can do is we can use something called data feeds and something called ad customizers. Ad customizers based on data feeds allow us to basically make ads more relevant based on the things that are important to that person. And let's see how it works. So I've got a feed which is full of data about all of the different products and services that I offer, all of the different numbers of quantity that we've got in stock, any associated discounts that are on those at the moment, any locations that they're sold in, like stores that they're sold in and ones that they're not sold in, things like that. What we can then do in the back end of Google Ads is customize our ads based on parameters. Now, what we would do here is someone that's been on the Pink Women Tops section of our website would go into the Pink Women's Tops audience. So I can tell Google Ads, if someone's been on that page of my site, that area of my site, I want the ad to say that in the headline. And what's better, we're currently running 20% off our Pink Women's Tops at the moment. So I would like the ad to say that as well, mix it more enticing. What we get out the other end is an ad that looks like this. Now, if that customer who's been looking at Pink Women's Tops before then gets showed this ad, they're so much more likely to click through. But even better, the people which are looking for other types of women's clothing, whether it be, jeans, hats, whatever it would be, those people aren't going to click that because ultimately they're looking for those things, which means that we're going to reduce that advertising wastage. This is the power of hyper relevancy. And honestly, guys, it's not that far away. We just have to apply ourselves into a way whereby we're unlocking some of these features that allow us to be hyper relevant. Now, to summarize, when your adverts and when your communications becomes helpful, whether that be providing answers to questions that your prospects might be asking, I should say, whether that's showing exactly the right type of advert that directly highlights the product that someone was interested in before, meaning that they don't have to go and find it again, that's useful. If we can just take a step backwards from relying on data and just think a little bit more about how these people are feeling and what they actually want, and remember that it's the human brain at the other end of the connection rather than just a number in Google Analytics, then your conversions will increase. In times of extreme uncertainty like this, we need to rely less on data because essentially the rule book is out the window. These are uncharted waters. And the way that we get through it is by using our brains, by using our intuition, by going back to old-fashioned marketing thinking. Back in the old days where they didn't have numbers to rely on, they had to rely on making people feel things. That's what we're returning to. We're going full circle. We're going to have to go back to making people feel things, to buy things. And that's where I'm trying to take things, essentially. The fact is that just plain and simple data-relied Google Ads doesn't work anymore. We have to combine that incredibly powerful and useful data, absolutely, with marketing thinking. Now, the fact is as well is that this stuff isn't just limited to Google search. What we can do is we can begin to tie this in with the other advertising that we're doing as well. So let's say that we're running social ads. We're a solicitor, we're running social ads for our family law adverts, right? We're probably targeting this at maybe parents of children, things like that, using that targeting kind of attribution, that targeting criteria. People visit the website after clicking those things because they're interested in that service. Maybe there's something happening that they're going to need a family law solicitor. When these people actually become to actually want to make a decision and they're kind of considering, they've gone from awareness to consideration in that funnel, they're searching in Google for lawyers near them, we can provide an advert which is hyper relevant to the service which they've already looked at. Family law in Lincoln. We know where they are because we knew where we targeted the ad. We knew what they were interested in because of what the ad was for and the landing page that they clicked on. Therefore, we know what it is that they're actually interested in. So all of these other ads in the search results page here are all just going to say solicitor in Lincoln, all of that. We're able to say family law in Lincoln, something hyper relevant to what that prospect is looking for. The result, more conversions. I guess the key takeaway from this is these are uncharted waters, as I said before. So now is the time to kind of try something a little bit different. The fact is that as soon as you take a step back and you think, okay, I'm not totally reliant on data, I can actually use my brain, I can actually be a little bit intuitive with this, you're halfway there. You're literally halfway there. You'd be surprised with how few people do it. You really, really would. But genuinely, there's no time like the present to try something different. I've read reports that said the advertising on things like Facebook is as much as 40% cheaper as people have been pulling their money out over the course of the last 6 weeks, 2 months. There is literally no time like the present to try something a little bit different and a little bit new. I really do think that. But the key takeaway point, I think, is if things don't work, just try and try again. The beauty of this stuff is that we can be nimble, we can be lean, we can try these things. And if they don't work, then it's okay. We've got more options to try other things. But I really would implore people that are watching this to think about some of the things that I've said, thinking about relying on data, thinking about having a bit more intuition, and also thinking about how they can be hyper relevant to those prospects that they're trying to sell to. Because if we can take this stuff on board, that's what will see us out of the other side of this extraordinary time. I'm really, really confident of it. So thanks for listening. I hope that that's useful. I'm sure Pete's going to fire some more questions my way.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of questions in. While Tom's answering these questions, if you can just throw some more in the Q&A section, we'll come to you. Make it as relevant as you want to your business. No worries at all. So Tom, Helen kind of followed on from the last question and says about building up distributor questions and podcasts. So I think what they're talking about there is how can they structure questions that the people would ask and how would they advertise those? I believe that's what the question is.
Yeah, sure. So the best way to do that is using platforms like answerthepublic.com or using things like googletrends.com. These are great platforms which basically give you an idea around the things which people are searching for and act as a real basis for the type of questions that people ask. When we're tackling this type of thing for our clients as well, we usually get together and say, well, you know, when you're kind of first introduced to a prospect, what are the kind of things that they ask you? And as soon as you kind of ask that to a client, they begin to think, oh, well, one of the things which people don't really understand is this. Or one of the questions I always seem to get, which people just don't seem to understand, is that. And then once you begin to sort of think about those things, then things begin to snowball. Before you know it, you've got 5, 6, 7 questions, which all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I can't really see there's much information on Google about this at the moment, but people seem to be asking it on Answer the Public, on Google Trends. People ask it when they meet me. Let's try and answer those questions and start with that. And what you'll find is that questions usually lead to more questions. So when we do this, what we find is we'll probably start with, you know, between 5 and 10. Pardon me. And then what you'll see is that on the back of that stuff, you'll get more questions through. So you'll maybe get a comment on a Facebook ad, which is of your podcast, which says, you know, okay, well, I was thinking about this, or does this apply to my industry, or these are my specific circumstances, does this apply to me? And then that leads to another question, and then leads to another question. And then it kind of grows outwards like a tree, if you like. That would be the way that I would go about it. And I think was part of the question how to promote that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the way that we promote those is, if we are running a podcast, then as I say, we dictate it so it goes on to written form. What we can then do is we can use Google Ads to then bid on the question that they're asking. So if someone's, let's say really broadly speaking, Googling how to set up a Facebook ad, and then we've got a podcast that was all about how to set up a Facebook ad, and consequently we've got a chunk of writing that is how to set up a Facebook ad, we would then run a Google advert that bids on how to set up a Facebook ad, and then link people to that page on our site where it's got all of that rich content.
I think to interject there, I think it's probably one of the most underutilized search ad technique on the market with potential highest upside. It's very, very cheap for the clicks.
Yeah.
If we're paying kind of £2 or £3 a click, you can get really, really low cost per click. So it's really attractive. Now, of course, the users aren't looking to buy right now, but like Tom said, it's all about top of funnel stuff. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The one extra thing I would say is it's all about making you become the person they want to ask, go to for answers. I mean, for example, half the reason you do a webinar like this is so if you have any marketing questions, you come to us and you ask us the question, not someone else. And that's what it's all about. It's about becoming the person. It's called the key person of influence theory. And become the person of influence within your sector. And then you have the first dibs of converting them, essentially. It's a very, very well-known strategy, and it's definitely one worth going to. And if there's any further questions on that, just reach out to us. hello@distract.co.uk or tom.jacobs@distract.co.uk, and we can help you further. There's two more questions, Tom. Jack says, for a photography or videography business, do you have any examples of how these marketing tips have helped businesses such as myself? As a startup, Google and Facebook ads are quite intimidating at £4 to £5 per day and very quickly add up.
Yeah, sure. So obviously the barrier to it is going to be the advertising spend, but the beauty of it is that you can be really, really like neatly targeted with this stuff. When you work with smaller audiences, it doesn't necessarily have to cost as much as it might do. To answer your question, like, have I seen it work for photography and videography? Absolutely, yes. We work with a video production agency where to get more leads, we essentially looked at who these people deal with. So we learned that this videography agency work a lot with other advertising agencies and are often contracted out by advertising agencies to be able to fulfill their video work, essentially. So we got together and we thought about all of the things which advertising agencies might want to know about video or might not necessarily know about video, but it's important for them to know. And we created a neat little ebook, which was basically the guide to videography for advertising agencies. Was essentially it. And what this did was answered all of these key questions which those guys have been asked. We then sent that out as LinkedIn adverts and targeted it to people that work in advertising agencies using that cool targeting that I spoke about before. What this did is it gave them loads and loads of like data points, i.e. names, email addresses, phone numbers of people downloading this stuff, which they were then able to follow up and generate conversations and generate inquiries from. So I think the key takeaway from this, whether you're obviously you work in photography and videography, but whether you work in that, a different industry, another industry, this theory is quite transferable, I found. As I said before, we were doing something with a company which trains social workers. I mean, that's like so far away from like videography and photography, but yet the theory transfers and it works over there. So that's how I would say there. I think that if you're sort of worried about the cost of advertising going into it, I think that the way that you minimize that is you become incredibly targeted and incredibly niche with it so that you're not blanket advertising, so that you're minimizing that wastage that you're going to get. That's how I would go about it.
I think on addition to that point, I think literally any business that has a average customer value of over £8,000 should 100%, like not even a debate, I don't care your sector, be doing LinkedIn advertising with ebooks. I haven't found a better strategy for creating those markets in terms of follow-up drip campaigns through email sequencing, etc. But the strategy of ebooks on LinkedIn for anyone who's got an average order value over £8,000 per customer, it's an absolute no-brainer. Next question, just on as a little asterisk to these points, just reach out, honestly, reach out with your business and myself or Tom will happily jump on a call and just point you in the right direction. I understand a lot of this is quite complicated and we're almost at a point now, unfortunately, I guess, where we're having to make these decisions we may feel uncomfortable with because of the time of the current market conditions. Maybe some of you guys on this webinar wouldn't normally be even debating doing internet marketing or digital marketing, but unfortunately this is what's happening, right? So I believe this is a second digital revolution. I think that you need to be getting on this now, otherwise we'll be really hurt in the future. I also don't think consumers are going to go back to how it was before coronavirus, but that's a different topic for a different day. Another question, Tom, from Craig Miles. He says, what is your advice for businesses that can't operate in their useful markets due to coronavirus? I have experiences I can offer, but how do I make it not look weird? For example, going from event hire to online technical training. Now, I don't know if that's one for you or me, Tom, but I would honestly say that the best markets to shift into if you've been physically shut is thinking about how you can utilize your current database. For example, I saw a really good example of this yesterday. A guy called James Sinclair owns a business called Marsh Farm. It's like a place you go and you pick pumpkins for Halloween, and you go stroke some goats, etc. And his farm's obviously been shut down. So what he did instead was he utilized his database to open a farm shop. Now the farm shop allowed people to drive up and their car will be filled with the groceries they ordered online. And hey presto, he's now got a profitable farm shop. So I think, first of all, no one really cares what looks weird right now. It's the coronavirus has made a lot of things look weird. But second of all, I wouldn't stray too far away from your core business or a way you can utilize your CRM system, because it's going to take such a long time to start from ground zero that it probably will take too long to make profit from it, if that makes sense. So I'd think about another way of utilizing your CRM, your database, to make that profitable. Good example would be our business. We do a lot on the speaking circuit. Our biggest lead generation is speaking. All events have pretty much stopped. What have we done? Well, let's do webinars instead. So we'll in the next week, we're moving all of our speaking slots that we've done across the UK all onto virtual webinars. So we're just moving our database and going, right, let's use our database to create more event speaking slots. So we're not moving too far away from the core offering. We're just utilizing digital innovation to make it happen. But look, mate, if you want to go and do online technical training, you go do online technical training. I mean, let's be frank about the situation. You do what you want to do, and don't worry about what's weird. I think one of the biggest people are concerned about when it comes to marketing is they're always concerned about what people think about it. I mean, I remember when we did our first ever video online, like 4 years ago, where I stood in front of a camera and started talking. Everyone thought that was weird. Everyone laughed at me when I went to all the networking events. All the other agencies laughed at it. And now you see them all doing it. Or 2 years ago when we started our first podcast, everyone said, why are you doing a podcast? And then other agencies now do podcasts. So just do what you want to do. Do what you use your gut feel and go against what you think is right. If it loses, no one cares. But if it wins, everyone watches. So yeah, that's my gut feel on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the key thing is, as well, is, where possible, try not to stray too far from what your key offering was pre-crisis, because remember, like, your CRM, that's what they know you for. That's what they know you are as an expert for. If, me and Pete picked up and then entered a completely different industry and just started up, then sure, fine. But everyone knows us as like marketing people. So what would be make most sense for us to do is to try and just remodel what we do slightly to just make it more accessible for the current surroundings, which is what Pete highlighted. So that would be the way that we go about it.
So Craig just followed that up and said, that's great, thank you very much. The other half of the business is B2B sales to factories. I used to train factory maintenance engineers, so I could, yeah, absolutely could. You could offer another service, or here's a big one, you could just change how you get inquiries. I'm very, very confident with that business model that LinkedIn ebooks would be perfect. Like B2B sales for factories. I'm telling you now, LinkedIn ebooks is dead certain for you. So reach out and I'll get one of the team to have a chat with you and sort something out. But yeah, thanks for that question. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. I've been told to just I'm going to steal the content back, Tom. I've been told to go over some options with you guys.
I'm just going to stop my screen share, mate. So you should be able to pick it up now.
Okay, one sec. We're back in business. Okay, right. So I've been told to get the screen going. Everyone see this? Tom, can you see this? Yeah. Yep. So I've been told to go over this for the university. Essentially, the university has some amazing grants open at the moment that all of you can kind of utilize. It goes for anything like digitalization grants, so you can get funding towards certain aspects. So if you wanted to do some marketing, I assume you can get funding towards that. Academic expertise, so that's getting academics to support you on projects. The graduate internship, this is something we used a lot in the early days of our business, where we would get a member of a recently graduated student come and work for us for a short period of time, and most of the time we kept them on. But it's really good for entry-level talent. There's loads of other things. I won't waffle on about them because I don't know them in a huge amount of detail. But the reality is the options are there for a lot of people. There's grants between £1,000 and £10,000, and you've got to match fund it. The key thing to say here is, with the recent business loan scheme that the government's given, especially the £50,000 one, you can use this as well as getting a grant. It doesn't block you from one or the other. So, for example, let's say something was costing you £20,000. You could match fund it. You could put £10,000 in from your government grant. You could put £10,000 in from their grant, and you paid nothing. And these are all options that are available for businesses in Lincolnshire at the moment. And the best people to speak to are Charlie and Karen at the university, who will contact you at the end of this 3-part series of webinars. But if you've got any questions, just hit me an email, which is peter.watson@distract.co.uk, and I can put you in touch with the relevant person. But don't stand still. These sort of offers and opportunities they're not here forever, you know? And I think now's the best time to be looking at all this sort of digitalization and stuff moving further forward. So that's that. As far as I'm concerned, guys, we're done here. We've wrapped up. We've gone a bit over schedule, so thank you for staying with us. Next week, we have Mike Shields, who's our head of PR, doing a discussion on innovative PR during crisis. It's going to be a really good session. The key thing with this session next week is no advertising spend required. You can do it literally by rolling your sleeves up, doing some tactics that Mike talks about, and getting started. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions, please reach out, hit me up on email, and I'll speak to you guys next week. Thanks, David. Appreciate you coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.